coming in from all over the globe confirming it as true. The event seems to have taken place at the same time all over the world, just about 25 minutes ago.
Life was filled with guns and war, and everyone got trampled on the floor.
I know what you're thinking. Why end times movies? Why Nevermore? Why? Well, I was forced to watch this tribe, so consider this my own revenge on the valid trauma I was put through. Yep, mustaches from hell. Context and frame of mind is an important set of tools to work with when it comes to end times movies, especially Christian ones of the eschatological nature. Now, I'm not a Christian, but let me assure you I'm not attacking these films, but approaching them, as I said before, based on the context for which they were released. Putting the fear of all holy shit in the unbeliever. But not before boring us to death with the first half of the movie, and that's where A Thief in the Night falls flat on its face. But we'll get to that shortly. Once again, we need to open with a little background on what has been known as the Thief in the Night series, out of which not only 4 films were produced, but a reawakening of end-time paranoia that was reborn. I say reborn as before it was a debatable footnote. That's not to say that Christians didn't believe that the end times and the apocalypse was a literal thing, but up until the second millennial buzz, it wasn't considered an important policy to preach it as an impending prophecy, save the odd reference to the establishment of Israel as a Jewish nation. Yeah, we'll be getting to that at another time. Way back in 1590, Francisco Ribera, a Catholic Jesuit, reinvented and taught the idea of futurism and the idea that the Book of Revelations... Yeah, sorry about that, storyteller. Revelation... Yes, that's another pet peeve of mine also. Was a book about the future and not the Catholic Church. Not that it was that either, but I'm not here to argue the finer points of biblical theology. He argued that the rapture, a supernatural event in which God's chosen to take it to heaven, would happen 45 days before the end of the tribulation. The concept of the rapture in connection with premillennialism was expressed by the 17th century American Puritans. They held to the idea that believers would be caught up in the air, followed by judgments on the earth, and then the millennium. Other 17th century expressions of the rapture are found in the works of Robert Maton, Nathaniel Holmes, John Brown, Thomas Vincent, Henry Danvers, and William Sherwin. The term rapture was used by Philip Doddridge and John Gill in their New Testament commentaries, and the idea that believers would be caught up prior to the judgment on earth and to Jesus' second coming. In Christian eschatology, the rapture refers to the belief that either before or simultaneously with the second coming of Jesus Christ to earth, believers who have died will be raised, and believers who are still alive and remain shall be caught up together with them, the resurrected dead believers, in the clouds to meet with the Lord in the air. This concept has its basis in various interpretations of the biblical book of 1 Thessalonians, and how it relates to interpretations of various other biblical passages such as those from 2 Thessalonians, the Gospel of Matthew, 1 Corinthians, and the book of Revelation. The exact timing of such an event is disputed amongst many Christians in 3 camps. The pre-tribulation rapture, in which those already in God's camp will be taken to heaven and spared the tribulation period, and those left behind would be offered a final chance of redemption. Then there are the final day rapturists who believe that it will happen on Christ's return. And then there is a camp who believe that the rapture is completely unbiblical. Guess it doesn't take much to figure out which theory is the most popular in end-time movies. A theory made more and more popular thanks to some small book series called Left Behind, in which the creators openly admit to being influenced by the series of films I'm about to review. And don't worry, Left Behind is on my list of films to review. Now, I have nothing against Christianity. Sure, my stance against the more radical and bigoted aspects of it is well documented, but as a whole I'm okay with religion, as long as it keeps its nose out of my business. But I'm not approaching this film from an atheist standpoint, because I'm not. I'm pagan. Though forgive me if it shines through now and again, but from a filmmaking, acting, storytelling, and yes, I will admit, as a target for which it was meant standpoint. You see, I saw these films, or at least 3 of the 4, when I was naught but 9 years old, and whilst the first film unnerved me, the second 2 scared me into religion, which was unabashedly the impact the filmmakers at Mark IV Films, a subsidiary of Billy Graham's evangelical empire, were obviously looking for. In fact, that's pretty much obvious in the first 45 minutes of the film, as that's all you hear. We open with a youth group message on the end times and the rapture to a mediocre, okay, I'll say it out loud, terrible song about the workers in the field and guns and war, etc., etc., to a discussion on the topics raised, to another message, to a more discussion, to stock footage of church proselytization. Well, you get the drill. But I'm being somewhat too harsh, as it does try, and I mean does try, to create some character development and build up to the inevitable. But let's start right at the beginning. Surprisingly, we start off the only part of this film done perfectly right, which is a massive contrast to the rest of the film, which loses its audience very, very quickly, sadly, unless you were a church congregation sitting through it with either genuine interest in the eschatology involved, or sitting through it out of sheer politeness.
Confirming it as true. To say that the world is in a state of shock this morning would be to understate the situation. The event seems to have taken place at the same time all over the world just about 25 minutes ago.
Suspense and intrigue are the hallmarks of a great thriller, and in its opening, A Thief in the Night delivers very well. The film may look more than a little corny by contemporary standards, and the 1970s fashions are truly horrendous, but the film did inspire fear in many who woke up to an empty house, wondering if they had indeed been left behind. It certainly gives a tremendous idea of what's supposed to come, and even though the rest of the film is a flashback, I can't fault the suspense in this scene, especially as the radio announcer reports the disappearance of millions of people throughout the world. It truly is a great piece of filmmaking, which is fast let down as we listen to one of the most boring youth ministers preach about the rapture. He's so uncompelling that even when he states that this prophecy is a matter of fact and it will happen, it has no impetus or impact, and the mystery and fear in the opening is lost, especially in the theme song. Oh God, I only wish it was that one.
Life was filled with guns and war, and everyone got trampled on the floor.
You know, it's a good thing that these films relied on non-profitable income and showings at local churches, as with this song alone, it's enough to make you cringe. I don't care if this is a 1970s Christian movie, there is simply no excuse for a mediocre melody, terrible lyrics combined with awful vocals. Even at 9 I was cringing, as this felt more like a preschooler song about death, murder, war and being left behind in hell than anything of impact. You know, I can see the Teletubbies doing a song like that.
And turns her head, he's gone. I wish we'd all been ready. 2 men walking up a hill, one disappears and one's left standing still. I wish we'd all been ready.
Oh, sorry. But sadly, it does serve one purpose. The overall theme of the first 45 minutes, which as I said before is just a lot of talking, cross-vestilising and 3, count them, 3 conversions, which on the whole seem pretty lame on the large part. It's also pretty sad that the filmmaker had no idea how to use sound in these conversion scenes, especially this one, as the crickets are chirping rather than having any real impact it should have on the audience.
Life, just doing what I wanted to. Oh, I haven't given any thought about what you wanted. And yet, you have everything for me. You gave your life for me. If I were the only person on earth, you would have done it just for me, so that my sins can be forgiven.
But I do see the style they're going for and the influences behind the film. When you sit down and watch it, you can see the horror trope they're going for. Yes, Christian movies and horror. That's quite the mix, but bear with me. There is a heavy element of a chainsaw massacre and Night of the Living Dead atmosphere here. Or at least a poor imitation of it, given the terrible acting, the terrible camera work, and the terrible editing. What made those two films work was ironically their realistic, spine-grinding atmosphere and ad-libbing that only added to the horror. Here, the poor attempt at realism falls flat on its face, as I said, with the terrible character development and only too real and boring preaching from the pulpit. And man, the only thing they ever talk about is the end of the world, as if it's the only thing to talk about in the entire film. Or their lives. And they hold no punches on the perceived persecution they as Christians are going through. Let me tell you something. This is persecution.
You are. You're nothing but an old bag of filthy Jewish scheiße. Why, you stinking old pile of garbage. You think you were still in America? You are in Theresienstadt. Understand? Get that in that stupid old shit.
This is not. Just because someone doesn't believe what you believe is not persecution in any way. In fact, again, I think the entire film works against itself in that way, as the so-called unbelievers who are obviously presented as promiscuous, yeah, no hidden message there folks, they don't do a lot of persecuting or discouragement in the entire film. Even after the rapture, even their one instance of mockery is light-hearted and in pretty good taste. No, seriously, get over it. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't help it. I'm trying to avoid a religious view on this film, but in this case, it's not easy. Anyway, having trouble seeing why this is marketed on IMDb as a terrifying movie? Well, I'll get to that near the end, as it does have its merits. Finally, after 45 minutes of all this getting nowhere and one scene with a snake bite and lots of lost potential, we finally get to the rapture. People walking about, going about their daily business, then disappearing. In particular, those who converted in the film, including Patty's husband. Oh, sorry, I didn't introduce the characters, did I? Well, that's because there aren't any. We see no real change in who they are, what brought them to the situation they are in, except that Patty was the wrong type of Christian, and Moustache Man and his girlfriend, yeah, forget their names as well, the film had that much of an effect on me, were obvious promiscuous atheists. And again we go through the rerun of the opening scene of the movie, and the impact sadly is lost in my brain because it's already numbed after the first part of the film, and it's amazing to see how stupid this world has become overnight. I mean, with all the preaching, the prophecies and the literal translation of what is to come, for example the mark on the right hand and the forehead, the largely former Christian population who have heard all this nonsense are more than happy to take their marks, with a very poor structure and thread as to carry on as to why. They just accept it. And whilst this part of the film is unnerving to a certain degree, as we see the society form, for want of a better description, I can't really say that much about it, as the majority of it is 20 minutes of Patty running. And running. And running. And oh look, she's running again. Look, I can see the point. Nowhere to hide, that kind of thing. But where exactly is the horror anymore? I get that running from the bad guy in a horror film is the thing, but when it's 20 minutes long, it's time to draw the thing to a close, even if you can't do any more with it. Oh, and look, her best friends, the atheists, have betrayed her. What a big whopping surprise. This had better be a dream, Patty.
These people will not be able to get away anywhere. And these there will be no place able to get away anywhere. And these there will be no place to get away anywhere. And these there will be no place able to get away anywhere.
Oh wait, it was? That's
coming
a
in
relief.
from all over the globe confirming it as true. To say that the world is in a state of shock this morning would be to understate the situation. The event seems to have taken place at the same time all over the world just about 25 minutes ago. Suddenly and without warning, literally thousands, perhaps millions of people just disappeared. A few eyewitness accounts of these disappearances have been... We were living on this earth last night.
Oh, WTF. It was all a dream about the dream, following the day that suddenly became a reality? So what was the point? What was the payoff? Seriously, we sat through a whole 30-minute dream of something that was already going to happen in the last minutes of the movie anyway? Word for word? How is this supposed to help Patty? Where is the character development in all of this? Looking back on it, Self-Defeatist doesn't even begin to describe this as a film, and I'm not attacking it because it's a Christian film. I've watched many good ones, and indie Christian reviews was far harsher in this than I was, describing it as the worst film ever. And he's a Christian. I can't say I agree with him 100% on that, but visually, storytelling-wise and character-wise I can't argue with that appraisal, as it suffers from literally everything that the church was obviously willing to forgive. It wasn't meant to be an award-winning performance, no. It was meant to present the obvious science fiction elements in the story as something that was actually going to happen. And if you're gullible enough to buy it, or even given to the paranoia the film presents to the audience it was intended to, one of which was me as a 9-year-old child, it succeeded. And sadly, more extreme elements of religion rely on fear for conversion rather than their actual message. But the less I say on that, the better. Worst film ever, though? No, not even the worst Christian film ever. But it does indeed have many flaws that, as an impressionable child, I obviously missed. But I do have to say, it's more of a curiosity in the cult market. Or more of a recollection than a recommendation, as Thief in the Night may be the granddaddy of end-time movies, but it certainly isn't the most recommended. However, this wasn't the last time we'd see Patty on the run, as she would return in A Distant Thunder. Not our next review, however, as we'll be covering something far more recent with The Remaining. Sadly, another film designed for more religious impact than biblical accuracy, and truly fails in the latter. And sadly, probably helping the first. But at least it had better production values than most end-time movies. So until then, ciao.
This is the first season of bad things to come. It's only